Good morning. My name is Carolyn Burjoski. For over 20 years, I taught at elementary schools within the Waterloo Region District School Board. Throughout my time as a teacher, my performance reviews were always excellent, and I demonstrated leadership in a variety of ways. For example, I was part of a team that pioneered the board's Welcome Center, where we helped newcomers to Canada get a good start at school. I also helped to develop the ABLE program, a specialized classroom designed to help refugee children quickly close the gaps in their education due to the upheaval of war and migration. In 2013, a reporter did a human interest story on my unique classroom for our local newspaper. I was proud to be a leader in this fascinating field. Today, I bring my testimony to the National Citizens Inquiry as a veteran teacher who is sounding the alarm that all is not well for children in schools in Canada. For several years, I had become increasingly alarmed by directives from the leaders at the Education Centre and the Union. As an example, we were expected to remove the words boy, girl, man, woman, mother, and father from our lexicon. This policing of language still continues. In fact, a recently leaked WRDSB workshop taught teachers that the word family is harmful. It went viral on social media with many people questioning why the school board wanted to erase the family, the most fundamental social building block in our society. One wonders what set of ideas undergirds this strange directive. Words are tools for communication. When the school system erases words, they make it more difficult for teachers and students to describe, to think, and to express ideas. For example, when the school board erases the words boy and girl, the children no longer have these words to describe or to categorize themselves. This is intentional. As adults, we are more likely to question this manipulation of language and the purposes behind it because we have enough life experience in education to be skeptical of the underpinning philosophy of such directives. But children do not have that life experience. They have not yet developed critical thinking skills, so they believe everything we tell them, and the reality we create with our words and the books we read to them. They trust us. Thinking about this made me feel uneasy about some of the new directives from the higher ups. I also noticed that some of the materials flowing into our elementary school library seemed age inappropriate or downright misleading, such as the early years document that advises teachers to tell children that grown-ups merely guess the sex of babies and that you get to decide if you're a boy, a girl, both, or something else. As well, there were new books in the library that clearly sexualized children. As an aside, I support teaching children who are going through puberty about how and why their bodies are changing. But some of these new diverse books cross into criminal territory, in my opinion, by showing children how to perform a variety of sexual acts, complete with cartoon drawings so they understand exactly what to do. At the same time that these new inappropriate books were coming into the schools, the board planned a culling of the library, removing classics written by Dr. Seuss, Anne Frank, Lee Harper, J.K. Rowling, and others. Yet a school board leader would not provide a set of criteria or explain the underpinning philosophy that motivated this change. That was enough for me, and I decided to act. I used the proper channels, hoping to initiate a conversation. I started at the school level with my colleagues and noticed that they seemed afraid of these topics. I contacted 2 members of the Equity Department who parroted back sentences from the Human Rights Code without engaging the actual questions I asked. So I did what any concerned citizen would do in a functioning democracy. I registered to speak at a public school board meeting. The school board was aware that I was a teacher currently employed by them, and they allowed me to speak. I was granted 10 minutes to address the trustees in a public meeting held on January 17th, 2022. I began by politely reading excerpts from 2 books that illustrate my concerns about the misleading and age-inappropriate sexual content in my own kindergarten to grade 6 school library. I read an excerpt about a sexually obsessed grade 6 boy who thinks about naked girls all the time. I raised concerns about how little girls might feel after being exposed to the idea that males like to mentally undress females. I voiced reservations about a young character in this story who identified as asexual because I think that a child who has not yet passed through puberty should not be expected to feel sexual attraction yet. I also read aloud from a book that minimizes the medical consequences of gender transition for children, which leads to permanent loss of fertility in adulthood. I questioned how children can possibly understand what they are giving up. It was at that moment that the chair of the board cut me off, terminated my presentation, and ejected me from the meeting, claiming I had somehow violated the Ontario Human Rights Code. But that was just the beginning of my nightmare. The next day, the human resources manager called and told me that I was suspended from teaching, banned from my classroom, and forbidden from contacting my colleagues and students. The board filed formal disciplinary charges against me. They hired an outside investigator in an attempt to fire me before my retirement, which was only 2 weeks away. My union rep, who should have defended me, publicly sided with the board on social media. Over the next few days, the chair of the board took to social media, radio, and television to publicly vilify me and label my speech as transphobic. My name was splashed across headlines of national newspapers. Within 48 hours, my sterling reputation, built over 20 years of professional excellence, was destroyed. I couldn't let this abuse of power stand, not only for my sake, but for every teacher and every parent who has been intimidated into silence. In February 2022, with the support of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, I filed a judicial review asking the Divisional Court to reverse the board's decision and allow me to come back to complete my presentation. The case went before 3 judges on June 5th, 2023, and we had to wait until November for the shocking decision. The Divisional Court sided with the school board with a decision that grants school boards sweeping powers to silence dissenters. I filed for an appeal, which was denied without explanation. The implications of this decision are chilling. The court essentially ruled that the boards can stop any presentation that makes them feel uncomfortable, claim that anything critical of their policies violates human rights, narrowly control topics to prevent real discussion, and silence critics under the guise of preventing discrimination. Since that court decision, school boards have doubled down on speech suppression. The Waterloo Board recently changed their bylaws to cut delegate speech time in half, ban delegates from addressing the same topic more than once in a year, and most outrageously, they require word-for-word written submissions for pre-approval. And they decide if you get to speak or not, and you have to read exactly what they approved. Think about that. In a democracy, citizens must submit their thoughts for government approval before speaking at a public meeting. The board chair can reject any presentation without explanation or criteria. The results are predictable. Delegations have plummeted. Critical voices have been silenced. School boards continue to operate in echo chambers of their own making. Our children spend 6 hours a day, 5 days a week in school. These institutions shape their intellectual, psychological, social, and moral development. Yet, our schools have somehow become laboratories for political activism. While their main purpose, to teach literacy, mathematics, science, and critical thinking, have been diminished. When parents object to their children being subjected to questionable ideas and materials, where can they turn? School board meetings were supposed to be that democratic forum, the town square where citizens could express concerns to elected trustees. But concerned citizens are no longer welcome in the town square. In fact, school boards are now openly bullying dissenters by weaponizing human rights codes, by passing speech-suppressing bylaws, by cutting people off mid-sentence, and by making examples of the people who dare to challenge their narrative. School boards have created a climate of fear, and the courts have done nothing to address this most fundamental of human rights, the right to free expression. So I return to your central question, are children safe in Canada? How can children be safe in Canada when adults whose duty it is to protect them are too intimidated to speak truth to power? How can children in Canada be safe when the very act of questioning inappropriate content is labeled discrimination and harshly punished? How can children be safe in Canada when its courts do not uphold the free expression rights of a teacher fulfilling her duty on matters related to child safety? How can children in Canada be safe when the very forums meant to hold schools accountable have devolved into a vestige of democracy where only approved scripts may be read? Finally, what will happen to the children in Canada when all of the adults who should be defending them have eventually been completely silenced? I'm old enough to recall when schools partnered respectfully with parents, valued the importance of families, and helped boys and girls develop skills and knowledge they needed to participate fully in society. Schools were places where parents' concerns were welcomed, not silenced. They were places where children were protected from making adult decisions, and childhood itself was guarded as a special and vulnerable stage of life. In summary, although I have paid a heavy price for speaking up, I would do it again and again and again. Because protecting children is every adult's responsibility, even when, and especially when, the system turns against us. We are at a concerning crossroads in Canada. We must resist this intimidation and not allow ourselves to be silenced any longer. Thank you.